Hey everybody, this is Christian with another Home Lab tutorial. Today's one is about the self-hosted automation platform n8n that I just recently tried out. And guys, what can I say? This is an absolutely amazing platform that you can use to automate literally everything. And it is super simple to use if you know tools like Zapier or if this then that. This works pretty similar. It has an interactive low-code builder where you can drag and drop or connect certain elements to create stunning automation pipelines for various types of use cases, such as IT operations, SecOps, DevOps, sales. The possibilities are really endless. For example, I've just automated my social media posting by connecting my Notion database that I use for manage all of my video projects and then send out social media posts to various platforms like Discord, X, LinkedIn, or connect any other application or platform that I want, which really helps me to save so much time. But of course, you can expand this to any other use case that you want. Today, I'm going to show you how to install this in your home lab completely self-hosted and how you can connect multiple applications and platforms and use some of the n8n's built-in data transformation nodes or the JavaScript expressions to build exactly what you need. I think for people interested in automation, this is definitely the platform that you should take a look at now. So let's just do it together. But before we start, let me quickly introduce you to another incredible tool that I'm using called Akiflow, the sponsor of today's video. Because Akiflow simplifies your project and time management by combining time blocking and integrations into one intuitive platform. You can use it to organize your entire schedule and boost your productivity by just dragging and dropping tasks directly into your calendar. For example, I'm always using this to plan my day whenever I'm working on my tech projects or making YouTube videos to just keep track of all the important things that I have to do. And what I personally like the most about Akiflow is that it seamlessly integrates into all of my favorite tools such as Gmail, Slack, Notion, and of course it can integrate into many others, which is really great for somebody like me who is always juggling around different projects at the same time. And I can easily synchronize my Notion databases into Akiflow, update the items, and then it synchronizes back again. And what is also pretty cool in Akiflow, it has an AI copilot that really learns your habits and auto-assigns tasks for you. So if you would like to boost your productivity and organize your tasks and projects, then definitely check out Akiflow. It's a really great tool for that. And of course, I will leave you a link in the description box down below. Okay guys, so now let's get started with n8n and let's build some amazing automations. Now, first of all, we have to install this, of course, so let's check out the documentation. By the way, in this tutorial, we are only covering the self-hosted community edition. If you're preferring a cloud service offering for whatever reason, then you should definitely check out the pricing. They have different tiers for their cloud service, and they even have some business and enterprise licenses for their self-hosted versions if you're using that in a company, for example. These are the usual features that these type of tools like to put behind a paywall. But if you're an individual person or maybe a small tech team and you just want to use n8n in a controlled private environment, maybe in your home lab or somewhere else, you can just use the free community edition. So just check out the documentation and there you'll find some great installation tutorials, some guides, how to configure it, how to add users, authentication, how to deal with scaling and securing. We're not going through all of these items in this video, but what I definitely would recommend you definitely should set this up in Docker. This is also what the n8n team recommends for self-hosting because it's providing a clean and isolated environment for the entire automation platform to run. And of course, you can use Docker Desktop if you want to install this on your local Mac, Windows, or Linux, or use the Docker engine and Docker Compose to deploy this on your home lab server or whatever. If you're not familiar with Docker, then you definitely should check out my Docker tutorials. There I'm explaining all of this stuff. Of course, I'm always preferring to write my own Docker Compose template that I will later put on my new website, christianlemper.de, or my GitHub boilerplates repository, so you don't need to write down all of this stuff while watching this video. Here I've already prepared the templates. By the way, there are just a few things that you really should take care of. The first thing is that you should always set the time zone correctly, because this is needed when you're later on scheduling tasks that you, of course, don't want to run them at the wrong time or so. So definitely check out the time zone. This is really important. And also, if you're not using a reverse proxy like Traffic, you have to disable the n8n secure cookie. If you're using Traffic, you can just ignore this. because then you can protect n8n behind a secure reverse proxy with trusted TLS certificates. If you have watched my traffic tutorial videos, you definitely should know how this is working, so just uncomment these labels, connect it to the traffic network, and you should also change the n8n editor base URL. Now for this tutorial, I will just deploy this on my Mac using a Docker Compose project and ARP stack, so we're not going into the traffic specifications, or I'm also just using a simple SQLite database, which is the default, but if you prefer a reliable database backend with Postgres, you can also uncomment these environment variables, put in your credentials to connect to a database, and then you can also use it with Postgres. However, the most simple version is the small template that I'm showing you right now. So this will just make sure that there is a persistent Docker volume where we can store the data. This is needed for the SQLite database, and I'm just running this on my local device. Anything else is kind of standard, so if you're not familiar with any of the Docker or traffic or Postgres specifications, check out my other tutorials, check out my boilerplates templates, and then you should know how this is all working. All right, so I think this is everything that we need. We can just deploy this. So let's go to my local n8n directory. Of course, I should start ARP stack before, otherwise it's not working. And then just run a Docker Compose up-d to run it in the background. We can also check the logs if everything is all right and if the application is starting. And now we can open the application in the browser. So just open the editor URL that you have configured, and that will start the initial setup where we have to enter our email address, first name, last name, and add a strong password. Then n8n will also ask you a few questions for a survey. I don't know if that's really important, but if you select I'm not using n8n for work, then you can ignore just all of the other settings. Maybe just add YouTube here when you heard about it from my YouTube video. That is nice. And then what is also pretty cool, they offer you to get paid features for free. I think it's not really necessary, but hey, if you can get it for free, just add your email address and then click send me a free license key. I've done this on my production environment, for example, and that adds a workflow history, advanced debugging. This can be pretty useful in some scenarios, so why not do this? So here for this demo, I'm just gonna skip it. And this is the main overview dashboard of n8n. All right, so if you're just starting with this platform, as you can imagine, when automating stuff, it's becoming very specific. So it's not really easy to show a tutorial where everybody just says, oh yeah, nice that you show this. Oh, I can use this in my environment. Because every environment and every person is different, you will likely have different use cases. You will not use the same tools and platforms like me, and you might have something completely different in mind. But that's fine. You can just use one of their templates. So if you click on templates here, it will show you over 5,610 workflow automation templates that other people have already created and shared. So these you can, I would say, use as a source of inspiration to just find out how other people have done several things, and you can just check out how things generally work. But at the end of the day, everybody needs their own kind of personalized automation workflow. So therefore, we are not starting with a template. I just want to show you how to start from scratch and how to really use some of the built-in features to do whatever you want. So when you start from scratch, it will just start with an empty workspace where you can just zoom in, zoom out, or add or remove any elements. What is important to know, every workflow starts with a trigger. For now, let me just click on trigger manually. We will later go through some of the other triggers as well. So this is just executed when you manually click on it. And what I absolutely love in this platform is that when you're planning or building your automation pipeline, you can always test the individual steps when you click on the execute workflow. So this will just execute everything. Or you can just click on the individual items that will just run that item, and it always shows you with a green overlay what nodes actually have been executed and what nodes would come after these. So for example, you can see with this green line, there is one item in the automation pipeline that would flow into the next element. So when I click on this here, and I can, for example, select some of the core built-ins like execute a command. So that will take me to the editing view of that specific node, where you can on the left side see the inputs. So whatever the previous elements is sending to this node. And on the right side, you would see the output of the data. For example, if I just type in hello world. This is a simple command, and I execute this. On the right side, you will see the exit code, this standard out with hello world. And this is also a node output that could be passed through a next element as well. You can now just start dragging and dropping these elements. You can place other elements in this automation workflow and reconnect them if you want. So delete connections and use these dots here to connect elements in a different way. That will, of course, always define the automation flow, and you can really add, change, or adjust things as you need. I think this is really super powerful, and it will also let you know when something doesn't really work as expected or there is an error at some node. So it's really easy and intuitive to use. And by the way, what's also pretty cool, you can also place nodes here. You can edit it in the Markdown language. And of course, you can also share these workflows with other users. And then it's really good to have some nodes that document or explain what this complicated automation pipeline is actually doing. So this is really a simple and very intuitive way of creating automations without actually writing any lines of code. But of course, it can get quite complex, especially if you're using JavaScript expressions or other commands and how to access data, passing from one node to another, authenticate to platforms, and so on. But don't worry, I will explain how that's all working. First of all, let us talk about the triggers. As I said, you can just run a manual trigger, or you could use something that is happening on an app event. For example, if you connect a Notion database, you could run this automation platform whenever somebody adds a page to a database or updates something. n8n can connect to many different applications and collect events from these. For example, let's do some cool stuff with GitLab. You can say that this pipeline should always run when somebody adds a comment or raises an issue or merges something into a repository. So there are many things possible here, but you can also, for example, run this on a specific schedule. Why I said it is important to set your time zone, but then you can run this every X seconds, minutes, hours, days, or what is also super powerful, on a webhook call. So this, of course, only works if you made your n8n instance available to the public internet, or if you are running another platform in your local network that will send a small web request to your n8n platform with that specific URL, and that will then execute the pipeline. You can also send some informations from the other third-party application to your n8n platform and then process different values or elements. For now, let's just stick to the manual trigger because that's simpler for a demonstration. And then let's take a look at the different elements or the nodes that you can create. Here, for example, the AI is pretty useful. Here you'll find a sophisticated AI agent. I personally haven't really played around with that, but I might do in the future. If you're interested in that, just leave me a comment if you want to see that. But you can, of course, connect any other AI platforms like Anthropic, Google's Gemini, OpenAI, or maybe your local Olama instance. You could also do this with a web request. So that is pretty useful. And then you can also do some other actions. For example, you can do any actions in a database, something like Notion. I know if you're not using Notion might not be interesting, but hey, that's what I'm using. So here, for example, I can make any modifications to databases. I can query elements from a database. I can append something to pages, or I can update database items. And you can execute these type of actions for so many different applications. Again, like GitLab or Slack, send a message to a channel or kick a user from a channel. Yeah. So the possibilities are really endless. And you can still do some core activities. If you don't find your favorite application, but it has an API backend or something like this, you can use core elements like an HTTP request to send this to any other platform or send a webhook. And what is also super useful, we will later drill into data transformation, where you can run code like JavaScript or Python. You can manipulate values, you can filter, you can split out elements or aggregate or merge. This is pretty useful if you're doing some complex logics that you want to build in n8n. Or you have some flow activities like if-else statements, switch cases, stop an error, wait a few seconds. Or what is also sometimes useful, human in the loop, because sometimes you just need a human confirmation if you want to delete something. Hey, do you really want to do this? Then you can send a message to Discord, Gmail, Google Chat, Teams, or Slack, and then wait until the user responds and confirms this action. If you want to use some of these application actions or triggers in n8n, you of course need to securely authenticate to your application first. And that is done by creating credentials. Like for example, if you want to send a message to a Discord channel, you can use a simple webhook. But other app integrations like LinkedIn, for example, might need a more complicated way of authenticating by using OAuth and a callback URL and these type of things. So it sometimes can be a bit more difficult. But n8n does a really great job of authenticating to different types of applications. In most of the cases, n8n has a documentation about how to fill out these fields. So when you click on Open Docs, here for Notion is a small document that will explain some of the API integration tokens, how you can create these tokens in Notion, and what you need to put into the different capabilities and options. So again, there are different integration guides for different applications existing. You could also manage these credentials in the main overview of n8n. When you click on the plus, click on credential. For example, let's create a new credential for Notion using the Notion API. So this I will just copy from my Notion developer platform, put this in here, and then click on save. There you can see if the authentication worked correctly, and we can now use this credential in our workflow automation. So let's get back to the overview. Let's open my workflow. Let's first of all connect the trigger to the Notion action to get many pages from the database. And when I now make a double click, that opens the editing menu. Here I can select the Notion account, so the credential that I've stored where I want to connect to this. And now when I select a database, it should already look on my Notion platform where the database is. For example, this is my social media post database. Here you can see that is the latest one that I want to publish for my Proxmox backup server tutorial. That should be published on LinkedIn and X. So you can see I'm storing this social media platform where I want to publish this to. And if I open this, you can also see that I have created different properties for a short version of the post. So this is mainly used for X because there you can't share so many characters, but on LinkedIn you have more space and you can share a longer post on this platform. So that's why I'm using different properties. And later in the automation pipeline, I've created an if-else logic depending on what social media platforms I have selected. Then it goes into a different automation node using the API credentials to the individual platforms. But first of all, I want to build an automation that reads all these database pages because I need to find out when is the right time to publish the post. So depending on what is the date element, there I'm storing the time and the date when I want to publish the post, and what is the status. Because I don't want to publish the post multiple times. So I also need to later update the database items when the automation workflow has published them and set them to published. So I hope it kind of makes sense what I want to build. So let's return to n8n and then select the social posts database. Here you can also set a specific limit because otherwise there will be too many elements and the automation workflow will run extremely slow. But of course, you can use filters in these applications. For example, any filter needs to match. So this is like an OR logical expression, or if you want all filters to match. So if you have different conditions, for example, the property status must be equal completed. So these are all the posts that are not yet published, but I have finished and done writing, so they are ready to be published. But I also need to match another condition, that is the date. So it should always compare to the current timestamp when the application is running. And here we need to use JavaScript expressions. By the way, these expressions are also well documented. Anything inside these two curly brackets are treated as an expression in n8n. And you can use regular JavaScript language and expressions to get the current date, time, or transform data and whatever. So let's return to the workflow. For example, let's start with two curly brackets. What is also pretty nice, it has an IntelliSense. You can use the now element, or what you could also use is the date time dot now function. Here you can see the result is the current date time when I'm editing this or when I'm executing the pipeline. Okay, so these two conditions both need to match. So all of the filters. The status needs to be completed, and the date should be before our current timestamp. So then this is a valid social media post that is ready to be sent out to the platforms. For example, we can also now execute this step to see if there is any data returned. As you can see here now, I don't have any social media post that is ready to be published now. So I think maybe let's filter for something else. Let's temporarily switch the condition to not before but after. So that means everything that is in the future. And when I now click on execute step, you can see that it's returning the element that I've shown you in Notion. Here you can see the output. You can see the video URL, you can see the short post and the long post. Everything that is returned from this database in Notion is appearing here, and you can use JavaScript expressions to access these specific fields. I will later show you how exactly that's done, but for example, if we would do something else like adding a new page, test post, and this is maybe in the future, and it's also completed. So then, for example, we should also return this object here. Maybe let's open this and say test post. All right, so then we have a new database entry. And when I now again execute this, you can see there are two elements that were reported back. What is really amazing, you can see it in the overview here that there are 2 items shown. So that means this node reported 2 items. And we can now say, what do we actually want to do with this? Now, if you have some batch processing node that can process multiple items at once, you can just add another node here. But in this case, I want to process 2 items here, and I later also need to differentiate them based on the social media platform element. And therefore, I need to split out these elements because all of these items here could have several elements for social media platforms. So that means multiple posts could be sent out to multiple platforms. And if you need another path or another processing for each social media platform, because the API integrations are of course different for Discord than they are for LinkedIn, then we need to use the n8n's built-in data transformation elements. For example, the split out. So this turns a list item into multiple string objects. And what is absolutely amazing in n8n, if you're adding a node that is following a previous step that already executed some data, you can see all of the fields that the previous node reported and use these at input values, and you can easily drag and drop the elements that you need. For example, the property social media platform. This is the list element that I want to transform into multiple items. So here I can just drag this into fields to split out. And then if I execute this, you can see that from one input item, we get 2 outputs for each of the social media platform. Now, these outputs only contain the field that I've split out, but of course, I need to send all of the other items as well, because I later want to access the short post value or the video link or any others. So I need to include all the other fields as well. When I now execute this step again, you can see there are 2 items coming out of the split element, but with all of the fields containing from the previous node. So this is exactly what we need. And you can also see here, we can create some if-else statements. So if social media platform is Discord or LinkedIn, then we can add different nodes depending on what social media platform it is. We have different app integrations that we want to trigger. Now, what you can use for this is, if you go to flow if-else statements or filters, I personally, for this type of integration, I would use a switch case element. Here, we can, again, drag the element that contains the social media platform into the value 1. And here we can say, as this is a string that contains the result LinkedIn in our case, we can say if the value is equal to LinkedIn. So then this is our first route. We can rename the output to LinkedIn and then add another route for each value. So let's grab the social media platform again. And let's say if this is equal to, what was the other? Discord, for example. Yeah, Discord. then we want to follow a different routing path. You can see when we go back in here that we have created 2 paths here now. So depending on what a switch case is matching, we can say for Discord, we need a Discord integration, something like send a message. Yeah. Then we can use our webhook or API integration, whatever. We probably need to create a new credential here, send this to Discord, and here we can say LinkedIn. So then we can send a post to LinkedIn, add credentials. I'm not going to do this right now. By the way, if you just want to test something and you don't want to actively execute some nodes here, you can just multi-select them and click on deactivate. So then they're not executed, but you can still test the flow if it's working. For example, if we execute, you can see there are 2 items. There are 2 posts in the database that are split out to 4 elements because each of the posts has 2 social media platforms. So we get 4 elements out and they're going to the switch case. 1 element is sent to Discord. So that's probably this post here. And 2 elements, this here and the other one, are going to the LinkedIn route. And there's another one going to X, so that I can probably add another route in the switch case and create a case for that as well. The only thing that I need is I need to update the pages so that when I send out the post, the automation workflow should switch from completed to published. That's also pretty easy because you can add any elements in between as well. So here, for example, Notion, and we can update a database page. Now we need to specifically say which object we want to update. So we can do this by ID. And luckily, there is an ID field that is coming from the get many database pages. So we can just drag it into here. So for this element that we've first queried, we want to change a property and we want to change the status to published, right? So that's it. Of course, I'm not going to execute this right now because otherwise it would break my production database. So I'm going to deactivate this. And by the way, what is also pretty cool, you can even do this in parallel. So you can connect these elements in this way so that the 2 elements coming out from the database query will be sent to the split out element. It will send the social media post to the platform and at the same time update the status to completed. So we can again execute this. It should nothing happen because I've deactivated all the important cases. And yeah, everything is working properly. That's literally how I completely automated my social media posting. Of course, you need to be somewhat familiar with how the JavaScript expressions are working and you need to try out a few things. But I think it is so easy because you can literally try it out on the fly, deactivate some of the elements that would break something or do some harmful things. But you can just run through this until you got it right. And I think this is really super powerful. Now, I could basically let you go and play around with this, build your own automation pipelines and add your own application integrations, credentials and stuff like that. But I still want to show you one more thing that is really important if you're moving to production, because this is just a test. If we want to activate this, I would change the trigger from manual to scheduled so that it every 5 minutes or so runs through my database, see if there are any new posts that are completed and send them out. Now, if I do this and something goes wrong, like an error occurs in a database or something like this, and the automation pipeline doesn't work anymore, I, of course, need to be informed by this. Then you should definitely set up an error notification. Now, there is a good documentation on how you do this. By the way, I will show you this on my production n8n instance. So here are my active workflows. Currently, I just have 2 of them, but I'm still experimenting with this. And here is my error handling workflow. So here you can see I've created an error trigger. So this will always trigger when a workflow is not working correctly, when an error is triggered. And this will automatically deactivate the workflow. So this is an n8n core element. I think it is this one here, n8n. Now, the core elements, again, will need an API token to the platform itself, because you could connect multiple n8n platforms and so on. So just go to settings, n8n API, and create an API key for the internal project. And then you can use this. And here you can see I not just only deactivate the workflow that went wrong, I also sent a message to my Discord channel, so I get a notification on my phone or on my laptop. Hey, there's something wrong. Workflow XYZ had an error and was deactivated, and I can manually troubleshoot this, find out what was the problem, and then fix it. Yeah, that's it about n8n. As you can see, it's a super intuitive and really powerful platform. You can use that to build any automation workflow that you want. And I think in the coming weeks and months, probably, I'm gonna experiment more with that. As you might know, I'm also using other automation platforms like Kestra or GitLab CI/CD. I really want to test this and see how it competes to these other automation platforms. So please be a little patient, give me a little more time to play around with this. And maybe you have some other ideas for automations that you maybe want to see or maybe want to show me. But now I let you go, I let you play around with this and have fun, experiment. So thanks everybody, have a nice day, and I'm gonna catch you in the next one. Take care, bye bye.